You don't need to learn everything about running business to run a really successful business. You only learn what you need to like stay in your lane and be great at the things you're doing. That we got into this and we just went. And I think that's like the message for people is like, you don't need to have it figured out when you start. You just have to know you're going to figure it out.
At Mekanism, we build iconic brands with soul and science. The soul is culturally relevant brand building, and the science is the always-on marketing activities that drive the bottom line. Learn more at Mekanism.com. Rise and grind or work yourself into the ground. In the past few years, a sole focus on constant productivity and hustle has spread throughout the world of marketing and really the world of business. And frankly, it is burning us out. The culture of overworking is forcing some people to live on autopilot, and autopilot turns into burnout. Let's be honest, nothing good is ever created after 10 cups of coffee and only 3 hours of sleep. Today, I'm sitting down with the founder of Dream Recovery, Todd Anderson, to reshape the stigma around rest and recovery. Before starting Dream Recovery, Todd was a walk-on at Michigan State who also became an NFL fullback for the Rams when they were still in St. Louis, I might add. He was also a sponsored athlete by TYR. Todd is a health and wellness expert for brands like Vision, an AI health companion app, and Arena, an all-in-one at-home training platform. In this episode, you'll learn from Todd why the science of rest and recovery has become as important for professionals as it has been for athletes. You'll also learn how Todd applied his sports science background to marketing a recovery product. And you'll learn why the tides of work culture are shifting from hustle and grind to recharge and unwind. All right, let's dive right in and learn about the soul and science of recovery. Tell me about Todd Anderson and your sort of, obviously I know you're a fullback, right?
I was a fullback, yeah. So I just run into stuff as hard as I could. That's pretty much my MO.
That's good. So
all in, all the time.
So tell me about, your journey from being in the football program and, how you ended up where you are today. And did you fall into creating a company? Did you always have the idea? Give me the story.
Yeah. So I walked on to Michigan State, which has kind of been my MO. I have a tattoo that says walk on
it's a big ass tattoo also.
Yeah. I approach life with that mentality of just, nothing's kind of given to you. And I think when you approach things with one, gratitude, but two, just understanding you're gonna have to earn everything, you don't really shy away from hard work. And I think that you have expectations that match the amount of work that go into it, which is not good when those don't add up. But
before we get into that, you obviously played in high school and your idea was to play at a high level in college. Did you not get recruited?
Yeah, I honestly thought I was going to play Division III football. I didn't have one even Division II offer. So my dad went to Michigan State. I grew up going to Michigan State games. I always say it was my dream, but it wasn't my dream because it was so far out of the realm of possibilities. And a lot of things had to fall in place for me to even get the chance to have the opportunity to walk on. So, but when I did get that shot, it came down to the decision of like, am I going to regret this if I don't try it? And that's kind of, I would honestly say that's how I've made 99% of the big decisions in my life is like, okay, well, are you going to regret if you don't go after it? And the answer is yes. So I can't really live with that. And so, things really worked out well. Not that, it was rough, man. It was brutal when I got there. There's a reason I wasn't recruited. But you stick with stuff long enough and you figure things out.
Like, do you show up at school? Like, how does that process work?
Yeah, so it's a Division I program. It's a little bit different. It's called a preferred walk-on. So basically, they're like, we don't have any scholarships. We have these like 10 spots held for walk-ons, and we're going to give you one of those spots for the fall semester. So I had an idea I was going to have an opportunity to be on the team.
Oh, okay.
I didn't just show up and knock on the door. That doesn't really happen too much nowadays.
Can you do that? Can you just show up and say,
I want to? But they usually don't do tryouts till like halfway through the semester. So you'd have to show up to school with the understanding like you might not even get that opportunity, which is a lot of guys, if they're good enough to walk on, like they're probably turning down D2 offers, definitely considering D3. So very rare that someone would just show up and try because like you're sitting around for a while doing nothing, so.
And when you try out, is the goal like, I'm going to be on the practice squad?
Yeah. So practice squad's NFL, scout team is college, but like my dream goal was literally like if I can just play on like a couple special teams my senior year, that'd be a dream come true.
Yeah,
Right. But I ended up starting after my freshman year. I was like, oh, I think I can actually do this.
that's amazing.
So yeah, it was. I was definitely a raw talent. Like I was from a very small school, so I didn't really understand the game that well. We didn't really have a strength conditioning program, so I came in way behind the eight ball. But once I got around the right resources, you get around the people that are better than you adapt really quickly. And I think that's probably was my best trait is just adaptability and kind of like rolling with the punches.
And how important is it to have high EQ and get along with the coaches and the teammates to like they have to like you also, right?
Yes and no. I mean, I think with the coaches, I mean, with the teammates for sure. I mean, that was really hard for me. I'm from a small town, right? Like we had one black kid in my whole school, right? We are a country town in Michigan, and then I show up. I got guys from Florida, got guys from Alabama, all different cultures. Like it was a shock to the system. But probably the best thing that ever happened to me, just because you learn to one, you don't know what you don't know, right? So you're like kind of in a bubble and you just get thrust into the situation where you got to make friends and learn about other people, learn about different cultures, and navigate those waters. And yeah, it was hard, man. It was super challenging that first semester. Like you make friends, but it's a lot different than high school, And I think that, and you're also like in this weird competition. But the best thing was our coaching staff was just super high integrity guys. They treated everybody the exact same, so there wasn't that dynamic you had to worry about. You knew you were going to get treated well. You knew you were going to have respect, and the best guy was going to play. But from a social perspective and just like a happiness perspective of meshing with the team, that was hard.
And then you get out of school, and where do you go next?
Yeah, so I was with the Rams for a little bit. I mean, that's a long story, but I ended up being with the Rams. Ended up actually failing a drug test for this like 1 in a million chance of a stimulant that's not even banned anymore, and try to appeal it. And that's kind of what ended my career, because I met my wife and I had a lot of injuries. So when that happened and I had this suspension because of it, it was kind of like a blessing in disguise, because I was so beat up physically, and I was just kind of ready for that chapter to close. Like I knew I wasn't going to be one of the best guys on the team, and I didn't want to bounce around a bunch of different teams. And it just felt like, it was time to move on.
But I think taking a moment to think about playing professionally and not even getting recruited at a D2 level is a massive win. Like anyone would call that a massive win.
Yeah. So, and I viewed it that way. A lot of people would be like, how sad were you? And I was super sad. I mean, it was crazy. So like my hometown, no one's even played Division II football from my hometown.
Yeah.
So when I went to the Rams, obviously it was a big deal. And so I got released, and I drove all the way back from St. Louis, and I stopped at this gas station. I called my best friend. It was like midnight. I'm like, dude, I got some beers. Like, I need you to meet me. It's just a low point, no one was home. And I stopped at my gas station in my hometown. I have a Rams shirt on because I was just at the facility and literally left there, drove home. And he's like, "Oh, did you hear this guy? Rams shirt. This guy from Napoleon is playing on the Rams." And I was like, "Sweet, dude." I'm like, "Not anymore."
And so after that, where do you go from there? What are your skills, and where do you take that walk on mentality next?
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to get in the strength conditioning world. Like I loved human performance. I loved, the strength conditioning side of football. I was very interested in that. So I went and trained for the combine or the pro day at this facility called Velocity in Naples, Florida. And I almost treated it like an internship. I knew that's what I wanted to get into. So I went back there and did like an internship and worked there for a while in Naples. I moved in with my now wife, Katie. She was training for the 2012 Olympics for swimming.
Katie Hoff, 2-time Olympian.
Yeah, she's way cooler than I am.
Just giving her a shout out,
Yeah, no, she's a beast. She's as far as determination and the ability to repeat insanely high levels of effort day after day. There's nobody I would match against her. So I met her, and then kind of dove headfirst in the strength conditioning world, and then I worked for Equinox. It's like a high end corporate gym.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. On the educational side, a lot in the education side, training people. I had an amazing experience with them. I mean, they had so many resources and connections. When they were like, "Oh, we want to get, for example, a sleep expert," they had the resources to be like, we want to get the best person in the world, right? So at my young age and like where I was in my career, I couldn't have picked a better place because of just the caliber of people I was able to be around and kind of get perspective on what that would be like. Because then eventually that's where you want to end up. You know, you want to be one of those people that other people are listening to for inspiration.
Right. And so after Equinox, do you start your own coaching?
So I have a company, my wife, that's mostly, it's called Synergy Dryland. It's mostly focused on swim performance. But in about 5-6 years ago, through Equinox and separately on my own, I do a lot of speaking on sleep and performance. And now it's actually shifted to more like keynotes about business and sleep, which is not something that is often associated with each other. But there are tons of studies that you can conceptually piece together and really make an argument that sleep from top down, your entire organization, is one of the things that will have the biggest impact on the chances of success in your business. And it's not my opinion. It's just, taking some of these studies, understanding leadership as a concept, and then, seeing how sleep affects leadership. And it's pretty cool how you can kind of paint this picture.
I'm trying to make the leap in when you went into like sleep as the subsection.
Right. So I started speaking on this, and I would always get asked for recommendations on products. Right. So there's never, sleep masks, specifically mouth tape. There was a lot of stuff out there and nothing I felt really comfortable recommending for one reason or the other, whether quality, the materials used, the branding of some of our competitors. And so I was like, I'm insanely passionate about this. Let's do our own stuff. There's clearly a need. The sleep market is evolving rapidly. Our market is literally anybody. Everybody sleeps. And so it was more of like our mission, and the need was there prior to any thought of a company.
So you sort of came to the idea because you were pushing the importance of sleep.
Yes.
And then you realized
I recognized it. Yeah.
that, hey, if there's not something I'm going to offer when people ask me, I might as well make it myself.
And it was selfish. Like I was the consumer, right? I was using these tools and I hadn't found a company. And honestly, the thing that we're really trying to do is, okay, there's this hustle, grind, rise and grind culture that's pretty toxic. And honestly, most of it is in that like business world, but it's actually,
Completely agree with you.
it's really bothers me sometimes. And I'm just like, we're trying to kill the rise and grind culture, because if you're taking care of yourself, you're sleeping well, you're doing the right things, and you have purpose in whatever you're doing. When you wake up, it should not feel like a grind. Like you should not wake up and have to drag yourself through the day for one reason or the other. Either you're not doing something that you have purpose in, or you're not taking care of yourself, sleeping well, and optimizing your physiology. But regardless, we want to put an end to that. So there was never really a brand that, told people that it's okay to sleep 9 hours if you're going to get up and kick ass. Like if you're going to be crushing it in the sports world, the business world, it's okay to take care of yourself. It's not a selfish thing. I mean, when you're sleeping well, it's really like you can pour yourself into your business, pour yourself into your teammates, the people around you, the people you care about at a higher level. When you're not sleeping well, you're only showing up as a portion of yourself, which really isn't fair. That's really the most selfish thing you can do, is just be, a sliver of what you possibly could be for the people around you.
Yeah, you're dragging yourself down and others with you.
Right. But people put sleep in this like selfish bucket when it's doing the opposite when you think about your interactions with people.
So what year did you officially start Dream Recovery?
So we're fresh. I mean, it's only been 9 months. It's been a little bit of a rocket ship.
That's from launch, but you probably spent like a year developing it?
I would say, yeah, maybe 6 months to a year. Like, it starts off slow, gradual. And so I have two partners, and they were actually working on a sleep mask at the time. I was working on the mouth tape. Met them. We had a bunch of conversations. Great guys, Division I athletes, and we just hit it off. And we had just different skill sets. And so we decided, let's do this together, because I knew what I was good at. They were good at very different things, and it's been a great combination where we've been able to kind of sprint instead of jog. Mouth tape is a very trendy product, so at some points, like, we need to sprint to evolve and change and be like the best in market. And so I don't think I could have done that without them.
what do you bring to the table that is like, what do you think you're incredibly good at?
The biggest thing is my passion for sleep itself. I have a very strong sense of like the science, emerging science, and I won't deviate from that. So everything we come out with will be grounded in science. And I think as far as a brand goes, that creates trust in the brand. So I would say I'd be more of like the vision as far as the actual products and the messaging that we're trying to convey. What I'm not good at is on the ops side, So as far as marketing strategy, I love talking, our strategies and what we're going to do. I'm not the guy that's going to be tracking stuff well. Like, that's not my. But luckily, nowadays there's so many tools and integrations that really can help you, dive into those things. It's exciting, at least for me.
Explain to me in simple terms how dream recovery is unique and solves that gap that you found in the marketplace.
We're trying to sit right in the middle. Like, so I would say a lot of sleep products, especially sleep mask pillowcase, have been positioned in they're very like luxury beauty type products. So we're trying to bring a more athletic, neutral feel to it. And then our materials. So like, for example, there's some high end silk pillowcases out there. They're 6 mummy silk, which is like a scale of 0 to 30, similar to gold. 24 karat gold is the highest. We're 30 mummy. We're the absolute maxed out. So every single product we have is maxed out as far as quality goes. Like our tape is made out of bamboo silk, way more expensive. We ship our adhesive from the United States. It's most expensive, medical grade. The brand is Hinkle brand. Nobody else is using, medical grade brand name adhesive because we just like really try to max out the quality. So it's not necessarily like we are coming out with some innovative products in the next 3 months. But I can't release all the details. But like, for example, we're coming out in nasal strips. We've been working with product engineers for 7 months, trying to innovate on something that hasn't been innovated on in probably 30 years from Breathe Right, or 20 years, whatever it's been. So we're trying to just like take these things that are proven through science and basically turn it up a notch and make it the best possible version of what it's going to be. Because a lot of things have been ignored because sleep has never been that trendy or people haven't been as interested. Well, now all of a sudden people are realizing this is a really important part of my life. And some of these things are getting like Breathe Right, for example, they're kind of getting, reintroduced to the world. And we're like, we can do this better. Just nobody's taking the time to do it.
This is a selfish question.
Yeah.
You know how you can do mouth tape horizontally or vertically? Does it make a difference?
No, as long as your mouth stays closed, it doesn't make a difference. I actually prefer the vertical one now that I'm used to it. I just think it's comfortable. And it also, obviously it's big, it's on your skin. So for people with really sensitive skin, it's, minimal footprint.
And what about nasal strip versus taping your mouth?
Yeah. So the nasal strip like serves a lot of a different purpose where like if you're not breathing through your nose to begin with, it's not going to do much because you're still not going to breathe through your nose. Like the chances that somebody isn't using their nose to breathe isn't just because like their nasal passages aren't dilated. It's probably more of like habitual or structural. That's not going to fix it, but it can exaggerate the effect. So if you tape your mouth and then put the nasal strips on, that can be like the best of both worlds. Or the nasal strips for exercise and things like that are great. And I think the biggest misconception with like nasal strips and mouth tape is that it's about how can I get the most oxygen. There's a relationship between oxygen and carbon dioxide. So when you're breathing out of your mouth constantly, you're actually expelling a ton of carbon dioxide, but it's more about your tolerance to carbon dioxide without getting too in the science of it. But like the more you can tolerate carbon dioxide, the more your body can actually utilize the oxygen in your blood. It needs the carbon dioxide to release it into your system to be used. So when you're only breathing out of your nose, your body is able to tolerate more carbon dioxide in its system, and it becomes much, much more efficient. You're able to utilize more of that oxygen that's in your system, not just intake more. Like that's not really what it's about. It's about being more efficient, not necessarily bringing in more oxygen. So then that also it basically puts your body under a lower level of stress throughout the entire day because you're so efficient. You're having to breathe minimal amounts of air in order to maintain homeostasis.
And how do you think about, it's a new brand in the market. You don't have a big company behind you pumping millions and millions into media.
Yeah, we bootstrapped it the whole way.
So how do you get noticed? How people find you?
To be honest, I say yes to a lot of things. I think I've built some really great relationships throughout the years, and have tried to, loyalty is one of the things I value more than anything else in this world. So I've had some pretty amazing people around me that have been willing to help, and I've helped them, and we had a lot of events and trades. So we've got a lot of organic stuff on social and events, and we've been in a lot of places that I think most would have to probably pay for, and we've been able to get in there just because try to be supportive to people over the years. And I think when you're trying something new, and you're doing something yourself, people are very willing to support and help out.
And is there one or two things that you've done that have had an outsized difference in propelling the brand?
I'm trying to think of something specific, but Meta does great for us. And I think, you know, initially we were trying to do it ourselves. So I think hiring consultants and really diving into that world and understanding how it works, that was a game changer, which obviously like anyone's going to understand that. But I think that we got into this and we just went. And I think that's like the message for people is like, you don't need to have it figured out when you start. You just have to know you're going to figure it out. And so that's been huge. And then honestly, something that's been working really well for us is like we only work with, as far in the influencer space, people who organically enjoy and use the products. So like anyone we've signed, they are a huge believer in the products, because what we found is like mouth tape is very similar to CrossFit in the sense of like if you like it for some reason, people talk about it like all the time. So when we get someone that's genuinely using and a believer in the product, it works so well because you can feel how committed they are to the product, and how much they believe in it. So we've probably been really shy in the influencer world compared to most companies in our space or within our ecosystem. But I do firmly believe in like if someone is a big fan, they understand the why, they're going to be a great representation of the brand rather than just going off of metrics and reach and who can get the most eyes on it. Because I do think the consumer at this point can feel when someone's getting told or paid to say or do something, and vice versa when they really believe in it. I think it's really powerful, and it's you know 10 times as influential as a script.
So if I can break down the playbook that the way I understand it is the first part is you get the product to be maximized and the best it can be in the sort of competitive set. So your product is like top shelf, that's number one. And then you get it in the right hands of believers. And then you let the believers do a lot of your marketing for you while you're doing meta ads and doing press in men's health and other things.
Yeah, and I would say too, like you said, get it in the right people's hands. We've seeded a ton of product because it's an experiential product, right? And you have to kind of commit to it for a decent amount of time to really feel the difference. So we're very open to like partnering with people for events and things like that, and getting people to use it, over a week or two, and really diving into it, because I felt the difference immediately. I've been doing it for 3 years ago. Once they experience that, they're going to talk about it and spread the word, regardless if we're telling them to or not.
And how important do you think the name has helped you? Because, dream recovery sounds better than hostage tape, for example.
I would be lying if I didn't that wasn't a big driver and why we started it too. So there was actually an event where, and I've used their product. Their product is good, and for their first to market, and people wouldn't let them bring it into the event because they were like, it was a college event. They were like, we can't have that brand. Like that's just not something we can do, which is fair. I was like, I never thought of it. I was like, okay, so I think it's helped a lot. And we're not going for the shock and awe. We're going for like I said, ground in science. We're not trying to not smoke and mirrors. We're not trying to like grab people's attention with gimmicky stuff. We're trying to just, make people feel better. And I think if we stay true to that, people will eventually, that's why the premium product isn't premium just to be premium. Like, for example, like the quality of silk we use, it's premium and it's so high quality because that absorbs the least amount of moisture. And for athletes, being hot and temperature regulation is a huge reason why they can't sleep. So the more moisture on your skin, the cooler you are throughout the night. And so like, we're not just pumping the best quality silk to do it. There's a reason behind why we're doing it. we're not trying to be, gold plated and make things look nice. Like if it's worth the price in material because there's a reason, we'll do it.
One thing that I think is particularly smart about your name is we've done work with Whoop. I'm a big Whoop user, and yeah, and it was a dream of ours to do a big campaign with them because it's I believe in the product so much. But
Great.
I think that idea of leveraging the word recovery, which has been used for a long time, and people understand what that means, versus dream sleep, for example, or just focusing on sleep. I think that's a big unlock because recovery, everyone knows they need it, whether you're a gym rat or a professional athlete, you know that you need recovery for your
Yeah.
body to do what it needs to do. I
Yeah.
think that's a smart unlock.
And I think it also implies that, you're pushing your body to the limits in some area, right? Like you're recovering from something, right? You're not just, everyone sleeps, but the idea is like our consumer is a high achiever looking to do big things that you need to recover from. And it doesn't necessarily have to be physical. It's relative to the person.
How important is the founder story when you talk about the brand?
I think people trust what we're doing because it's such a genuine love for one, the subject and helping people. My whole life has kind of led up to this moment. Like my whole life has been building for this avenue. And it's just so rewarding when I get these messages from people about how much it's impacted their life. I think people know based on my background, especially, and also my partners, that like we're not trying to sell you on something that's not going to work. And every product we come out with, the only reason we come out with it is because it can help you and make you feel better and perform at a higher level. So I think the story aligns so well because it's so genuine. It's not, there's no like faking like where this came from. It's like very clear. So I think that it does help. And I think that it's something we talk about all the time just because it's hard not to, because it all stems from there.
How do you measure success and where you are and where you want to be with this, startup? Are you a person that's good at having patience? You're playing the long game, or you just want to get this thing to blow up as fast as possible?
I'm not that patient, to be fully transparent, but it's not necessarily like a impatience of like the money and the size of the business and the sales aspect. It's more of like, how can we come out and innovate with the best products before anyone else comes out with them? Because it's such an emerging space. So I think I'm impatient on the innovation side. Then some of the product development stuff takes a long time, and production, manufacturing, especially high volume stuff. So that's what I'm impatient about. And I don't want people to like, I want us to have an idea that could, help people and be first to market on, and then like drag our feet and someone else thinks of it. That's kind of my impatience. But I think as far as the vision of the business side, I think, we can play the long game. And I think it is a balance between being super aggressive. Like we almost did a big deal with the UFC. Like we almost really rolled the dice on a few big things, balancing that impatience and trying to take some shots on the marketing exposure side, but yet being smart, because again, we don't have, some big VC behind us. Like we're bootstrapping it, and we've been profitable from the get go, but we're growing at scale.
What is the hardest part of building a company?
I think the hardest part is the thing that I got really lucky with, and the fact that my alignment with my partners, and then also like some of our closest team members, has been really seamless. Been in situations or seen situations, a little bit dysfunctional, or the tasks or the way that things were assigned to people wasn't as flawless, and that stuff. And then the other thing is, I think it's been hard to like trust your gut in some sense, right? Because I didn't come from this space. I'm constantly doubting things on the business side. And there's been, 4 or 5 things that if, you think you're like, wait, this doesn't make sense. And, you run it through your head a million times, but you almost just need affirmation from somebody that's been there and done that that's the right move. And we've made some mistakes that if we would have just trusted our gut, we would have been in a better place. And so I think that sometimes like you don't give yourself enough credit for, even though maybe you haven't been in that situation or you haven't been in the exact same space, if you just think things through and they make sense and there's logic behind it, it doesn't mean that it's not a better way. And just because other people do it differently doesn't mean that's the best way.
It still doesn't mean it's going to turn out the way you want, but certainly when you don't trust your gut, it doesn't turn out the way you want. For those startup companies out there, I think you made a great point of the power of the right partnership, because if you have unique swim lanes, you're not all trying to do the same part of the job, and then you have good chemistry, that's sort of a great recipe for success. And if you're handcuffing yourself internally before you're even out to the external world,
Yeah.
it's going to be a much harder climb.
And I'm a very like I like to have a good time. I'm a relationship oriented guy. So if I wasn't having so much fun doing this, like it's hard to go above and beyond and do everything you can and scratch and claw when you're not around people that you enjoy. You're not doing something you really like. You know what I mean? So when it sucks, like you're never going to reach as high because you can't squeeze out all that effort when you're miserable. I think that that's something that we've done well too. It is, everybody talks about just like starting a business and kind of killing yourself from just doing everything you can, but we've kept the work balance in mind, and we have it set up to where like we have flexibility, like we're doing things we enjoy, we're getting workouts in, we hold each other accountable to all this stuff, and like it's very sustainable, it's very fun, like we're having a great time. And I think that if we were to load ourselves up and maybe not disperse some of these assignments as well as we do, like we wouldn't be as successful, just because I truly believe like that energy and that momentum is very powerful, and that you're not going to find that on a report or a spreadsheet, but there's something real about just being in a positive headspace and keeping momentum and having like being optimistic about everything you do. Like you have a belief that it's going to work when you're having a good time like that.
And what's the hardest part of your job?
I think the impatience sometimes. I think that sometimes things are out of control. There's a lot of moving parts, and things happen, and there's breakdowns, and sometimes there's not something you could have done to prevent it. Sometimes you did make a mistake, you probably could have prevented it. So working through that and having to take a few steps back and dig your heels in is like really difficult, especially in the beginning. When like we have some trendy stuff and we're on this like great trajectory, and so when you get in your own way, that's hard to deal with, and then not letting that kind of affect you. But this too shall pass, right? Like everything has its ebbs and flows, and keep your head down, and usually you get out of it.
Is there something you wish in a year from now? Is there some part of marketing you hope to end up doing with the brand, or
Yeah, I mean, we have some big goals about the nasal strips and getting them in sports that have never seen anybody, one, understand the power of nasal breathing, and two, wear them in competition. We would love to work with some PGA players. We would love to work with some NBA guys, maybe tennis, just because I think the science of nasal breathing is just starting, like people are really getting on board, but it's still new. And the product we're going to come out with, I think they look cool enough and they're different. And I think that people will be excited to wear them. And once they try them, I don't think they'll want to compete without them.
where do you sell Dream Recovery now?
So we are on Amazon. We just got on Amazon, but that's a whole thing because like they don't allow mouth tape. So it's ours. What we sell on Amazon isn't technically mouth tape; it's performance tape.
Okay.
But and then we're direct to consumer on our website right now. But we just did a collab with Roan, so we did branded Roan mouth tape. Which
We had Rowan on the podcast.
who'd you have? Nate.
Nate, yeah,
Yeah, Nate's like a good
he's
friend. I mean,
awesome.
he's like salt of the earth. Like he's
I
as
love that guy.
good as guys they come.
Yeah,
And he's actually been super helpful. He's been one of my mentors throughout the process, and he's been through a lot of.
I know. They bought their company back.
I know. So I'm like, and whenever I'm like from a big picture strategy perspective, he's been an amazing resource and just like stand up guy.
Yeah, he's great.
So yeah, and we're looking to get into some retail. The only thing with retail is, mouth tape specifically is a little, some people are hesitant, people are a little weird about it, but we'll really go after retail with the nasal strips. I think that'll be more of a retail play.
Who of the partners do you guys all work on marketing, or do you?
Strategy wise, yes, but I would say Jake, who is they're brothers, Jake and Cole, but he's kind of like pulling the strings, and then we have consultants for Google, Meta, Amazon, and so we utilize some outside resources for that.
You look a lot at the data and the results and where to put money.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I was a math major. I was a math major in college, like in the first half. So like that's kind of where my brain always goes, and it's amazing to be able to like really dial into some of the, even though Meta, it's not perfect for sure, but It's cool to just be able to really see what's going on, and it's almost like a game in some sense. Like you can pull on these levers, and it's a game with some creative. But it's been fun to learn the process. And like I said, we're going from nothing, right? We're figuring this out on our own. So by all means, I'm not a master, but it's crazy how much you can learn. There's so many resources out. I mean, like stuff on even your podcast, for example. There's so many resources out there to learn these things. It used to be like if you didn't have someone on your team that had experience, you were kind of out of luck. Well, now it's incredible just how many resources are just like an arm's reach away.
When you think about the future of where you want the brand to be, what would you say that you hope the brand becomes? Obviously, aside from hugely profitable and you make a ton of money. And
Yeah. I would love to see them in every single locker room, every pro sports locker room, because of what that represents. And that means that it's become a technology, and the science and the mechanisms are that well known, which means like if everyone is that bought into breathing through your nose and sleeping well, chances are there are a lot of people out there that are living a much higher quality of life than when we started. And I think that's the main goal.
I love that. That's a great, clear aspiration.
Yeah.
And a good North Star.
I actually I've never really thought of it till right now. So that was like, I'll keep that in 3 years from now. We can check in and see.
I mean, that's great though. That's a good benchmark.
Yeah.
Do you guys, when you think about the future, do you feel like it's hit critical mass yet? The like sort of fall of the rise and grind culture and the importance of sleep and recovery. It's coming, or it's here, or where are we in the timeline of that?
I think we're about 15% transferred over to the better mindset. I think it's still about 85% rise and grind. As far as if you were to ask people, what does it take to start a new business or be successful or climb the corporate ladder? I still think a lot of people are stuck in that, like that more is more or more is better. I mean, like more is not necessarily better. I think that's really the difference is like, because you're awake more hours, that definitely doesn't mean that they're better, more efficient hours. And that is the difference.
I love that. And I totally believe in it. Do you have a marketing mantra or any mantra or quote that as an entrepreneur that you keep going back to or that propels you on those rough days?
On the rough days, I went to Michigan State, so we're the Spartans, right? And so on the rough days, there's like a scene in the movie where it's like raining and they all have their shields like next to each other and it just says hold and it's like pouring rain. So that's like our mantra when things go rough. But
I love that.
I actually have a bracelet that says hold on it. We all three wear it because
that's awesome.
Tough times. But I think our mantra, like we always go back to the science. We even like our ads, obviously ads, like there's a certain spark and you need to communicate a certain way and there's a sales aspect, but we never want anything out there that doesn't reflect back to the science. Like we don't want to be gimmicky no matter what it is. So if you stay true to the science, what's going to help people, you'll figure out how to communicate it, but you're never going to portray the brand in a way that's going to be harmful long-term.
All right. Well, actually a ton of wisdom here from this conversation. The killing of the rise and grind culture, I think is great. I think that workflow of, making the right products with the right name, getting them in the right hands, and then letting that do your market. I think the overall goal of getting in every pro locker room will be a barometer of success. And I think this idea of trusting your gut and always remembering to do that, even when, the conventional wisdom might tell you something different. And this more is not more idea of our culture, I think is really important. And I love this idea of hold. I'm going to use that one. It's really good. I also think you've got a future book called Walk On somewhere.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I want to do one. My idea is like, I'd love to talk about like my experience, but then get like 10 questions and interview like the top 10 walk-ons of all time. And
That's a great idea.
Kind of like see how things line up throughout. And I have no idea what will come of it, but I think it would be cool.
But I think you could take that idea into people that walked on in the business world, right?
Yeah. You could almost do two versions of it.
Yeah. Cool. You could do sports, but you could also do people that, kind of had no shot and got to where they were. But I think that's really inspirational. All right. Now we're going to talk about something that's inspired you recently. And I'll go first just on this topic that we've been talking about, which we're both big fans of Whoop. We've been fortunate enough to do work with Whoop. But I think what this kind of brought up is the power of personal data and trying to unlock your potential, whether you're an athlete or your potential in, I don't know, public speaking, how you perform at work, in your relationships. But the idea that we measure everything else in our world, but measuring your heart rate variability and your sleep and your recovery, like all that stuff, when you first think about it, it seems overwhelming. And you're like, I don't want to know that much information. But when you start doing it, it really makes an outsized difference because I feel this way because the data is right. It's not lying. And I know when I feel great, I did get the right amount of sleep, or I did push myself hard enough to improve. And I think my inspiration is, whether it's any fitness tracker, obviously you want to get Dream Recovery products, which I just ordered while we were recording this. I think, measuring your personal data, don't overlook it. I think it's really important. That's my inspo of the week. What's yours?
I love that. I actually got mine from my mom. I was lucky enough. I was speaking out in Scottsdale. I got to fly her out, and we spent 3 days together, which is, I'm 35. It's rare that you get to spend 3 days alone with your mom, just hanging out and going to the pool and stuff. And like one day I walked out of the room, had to run back in, and every day she wrote a handwritten note with $5 to the housekeeper who was cleaning the room. And then she also wrote a new note and gave $5 every day we were there to make sure if there was a different person cleaning that they were appreciated. And my mom is one of the happiest, just like grateful people. And so I think intentional acts of gratitude go a long way. And then I woke up today and there was a new study that came out about how practicing gratitude actually outperformed many like antidepressants and even exercise and activity as far as like eliminating depression like symptoms of just the intentional practice of gratitude and things you're grateful for. So
That's amazing. I didn't know it was that powerful.
yeah, it's super
I
powerful.
always think about it as like sleep, diet, movement. I never think about gratitude. Like that's another one in
Well,
there.
it's in that, and also just that's another thing that people don't think about is just relationships with people. Like, people are always like they're important, but actually like measuring its effect on longevity is incredible. And the better relationships you have with people, the longer you live. And you don't often put that in the bucket of sleep, diet, exercise, all the things. But as far as measurability of how long you're going to live and how happy you're going to be, that's right up there.
I love that. What's a lesson that you learned recently that you want to pass on? Mine was, and this is a little off our topic, but in my business, I'm running an advertising agency and I don't know, got a couple hundred employees, and I'm always thinking about like the next thing and how we stay ahead. And AI is like, it's all anyone talks about. And AI is coming for our jobs and et cetera, et cetera. It can be overwhelming. And I had to break down, my lesson is to break overwhelming things down into simple, for yourself, digestible ways to think about them. And so I think about AI as generative AI it makes things, it helps you make and create things, and predictive AI helps you learn things and plot the future. And so when I think about learning AI, I try to break it into what's the knowledge I need for those two buckets to know enough to stay ahead. And so my lesson is, whether it's AI or something else, it's to take things when you're feeling overwhelmed and break it into a way that you can understand it, learn it from that vantage point versus trying to like boil the ocean and learn everything about it. Try to dumb it down for yourself. That's my lesson.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think mine is similar, or not similar, but it kind of relates. Is my buddy who stayed with us last night? His name is Pete. He founded Sisu Sauna.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so they're crushing it. I think what I learned is like you don't need to learn everything about running business to run a really successful business. You only learn what you need to like stay in your lane and be great at the things you're doing. But I think that sometimes like if you don't know like all these like acronyms and things people are talking about that just kind of cloud the space, people sometimes doubt themselves, or me, or I was talking to Pete about it, like that you're not as successful in the business world.
I
But
know
like
what you mean.
also you don't need to know all that stuff. Like you can have people talk up and down and they sound like a wizard as far as assessing business, but that's a lot different than creating a successful business. And you can have amazing products and get the right people around you and not really know that much around it. But if you stay true to the mission, things fall into place. And I think that like there's no reason to know it just to know it unless it's going to push you forward.
I love that lesson. And we can get insecure about it. Makes us worse at the things we're good at if we focus on it. But also, you just have to find someone that is good at that part, right?
Absolutely. And that's a lot faster than learning it all.
A guy who's done advertising on Meta for 20 years that's a consultant, you don't have to learn it. You just got to find the guy that or the girl that knows it, focus on what you're good at. But your job is to, make sure you've got your bases covered, but you don't have to learn everything, right?
Yeah. And that's been our MO from the beginning. Like we've been humbled and we have no shame in if we don't know or we don't think we know, like we're going to find somebody that does. I think we've made a few mistakes and we learned very quickly, like let's get somebody that knows what they're doing before we do that again. And
Yeah. All right. And finally, closing out the show, what's a double dog dare you have for our audience? What's something that our audience should try out this week?
I would say for 7 days straight, try to stay within 30 minutes of the same bedtime and wake time, and it will change your life. 7 days a week.
7 days. Like for 1 week, you go to bed and you wake up at the exact same time.
Exact same time. So probably 2 weeks, but see how much impact it has on your mood and how your day-to-day function goes, and you'll be shocked. Also with your Whoop score.
Yeah, totally. Don't watch that last episode of your Netflix series. Turn it off. My double dog dare for this week is I had this one before you brought it up, but you talked about the impact of relationships on health. And my double dog dare, this is something I always go back to, and I wrote about this, the importance of this, but nurturing connections and don't let relationships drop to zero. Never go so long with losing a connection, and plan your schedule so that you're reaching out and staying connected to those key relationships, because it's very easy in the course of the day-to-day hustle and bustle to let those relationships slip. And I think it goes really a long way to stay on top of those and make it a priority, not the bottom of the list, but the top or the middle of the list.
Yeah. No, I think intentionality with that. It's so easy to let things slip. And it's like, I just hate the word like networking, like when people have intention behind meeting people. And people are like, oh, stay in touch with people for networking. And it's like, no, if you actually just care about people and then you put intention behind it, you'll want to stay in touch. And sometimes it's hard because life is busy, but like, if you actually just care about people, you're not trying to meet them to use them for something down the road. When you give yourself a time, when you scroll through your phone, who haven't I talked to in a while that I really care about?
Yeah.
Pretty easy to knock them out because, like you said, you do care and you value that relationship. But sometimes people just try to stay in touch with people because, they think they're going to get a favor down the road. You can see through that like from a million miles away.
Yeah, it's so obvious. All right. Well, this is awesome. Where can people go to try the product, and where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, we're on Amazon, and then just dreamrecovery.io is our website. I'm on Instagram the most. I'm happy to help. People DM me all the time. I love to help people out with their sleep questions, and that's why we started this. So shoot away. I try to get to as many messages as I can.
All right, you heard it here. Hit them up. What's your Instagram?
Just Todd Anderson 42.
Thanks, Todd. Really appreciate it, and best of luck in the future of the business.
Appreciate it, man.
Soul and Science is a Mekanism podcast produced by Maggie Bowles, Ryan Tillotson, Tyler Nielsen, Emma Swanson, and Lily Jablonski. The show is edited by Daniel Ferreira with theme music by Kyle Merritt. And I'm your host, Jason Harris.